You are listening to No PC Allowed, aka No Political Correctness Allowed, and I am Mac Iverson. What is the inevitable next phase that the pro-life movement must go through to greatly curtail the abortion industry? Looking at the current strategies of the pro-lifers, there doesn't appear to be much that's new on the horizon worth getting excited over. Why is that? Because the pro-lifers' main focus is always on the defenseless child who has no voice, but also that abortion is murder. But many people don't really believe that it is murder. And why not? Again, it's simply because that unborn child has no voice and couldn't talk if he wanted to. It is human nature to use and abuse another, especially if the other person says nothing or has no voice. It doesn't matter at all that women are doing this to their own kids. It's human nature to blow off others, even family members, because people strongly tend to be rather selfish and lazy. Therefore, for many women, it's a lot easier for too many of them to get an actual abortion with all the sick and twisted violence that comes with it than to do the more responsible thing and take a birth control pill, or better yet, just abstain. Here's my biggest gripe against abortion, and I think everyone who has a moral conscience can agree on. It harms society, which means you, the conscious citizen, which means everyone, not just the unborn. The loss in sheer numbers of the talent pool alone is incomprehensible. Think of the most talented, benevolent, wise, hardest working, and courageous leaders you can think of. Not just historical figures, but people you know in your own social circle. And then magnify that subtraction with numbers of millions of abortions each year. Also consider that as close as we are to curing certain cancers and even heart disease perhaps, with a vast infusion of much larger numbers of people, of smart, passionate people, who might have been born, think of all the diseases that would have been cured. And there's vastly more benefits in terms of not just economics. Well over $7 trillion is lost each year, but mostly in the loss of love and personal growth, which overlaps and intersects to unfathomable depths. This is all God stuff that the shallow liberal tends not to dwell upon. The economic disadvantages that would come to some families from non-aborted kids doesn't matter. That's just an excuse. Think of all the figures from history, especially here in America, who came from nothing, even horde backgrounds of abuse and poverty to grow up to become great. Worst of all, our callous disregard for human life grows calluses on our feeling souls. This, I believe, is the worst effect of abortion. That's boiling everything down to the bare basics, and it sounds rather cold and harsh to pro-lifers because I'm not focusing on the unborn child. But that is what they are up against today. The abortion pill is another matter entirely. Its introduction may seem to change nothing on the front lines of battle, but it actually has made abortion sort of like taking vitamins. As long as they don't forget their pills, killing their child becomes clean and guilt-free for most of these women. So the momentum is not with the pro-life side. But the way to judge a tree is by its fruits. Let's take a quick look at the fruits of some of the biggest pro-life activists. Not to sound too critical, their hearts are definitely in the right place. But are their minds? My contention has always been that abortion is horrible, mostly because it is a reflection of two of the worst long-standing trends in the Western world today. Number one being feminism, and number two, its twin ugly sister, porn on demand. First, feminism. This scourge didn't really take off until the 1970s, which is accompanied by what is known as the sexual revolution. The explosion of porn in the late 70s helped to greatly fuel it. Its prominence affected men first, with women quickly tumbling after. Would it be possible to argue that porn is something separate from free speech, as I do? Or is it just a slippery slope as the legal scholars have all seemed to convince us? Meaning, if you limit porn, speech will be limited as well someday as a result. The porn industry is just like the cigarette industry. It wants younger and younger users. You know this is true because the entire trans industry has spent decades now targeting and continues to target toddlers. That's right, I said toddlers. The libtards love to couch the pro-abortion view in terms of morals. We must have compassion for the downtrodden who cannot afford children. But hasn't this always been the case? In fact, many don't know this, but by 1965, all 50 states had outlawed abortion, and America was not falling apart from 65 to 73 when Roe v. Wade was passed. In fact, there were few newspaper articles even paying it any attention. In other words, 50 state abortion restrictions were not a problem, but perceptions have changed radically in the last 60 years. Since then, pro-life arguments have largely fell on deaf ears, but things are slowly starting to change. A few days ago, I saw a billboard that flashed up a message directly to liberal women. Spread love, not your legs. Things are at the cusp of changing right now regarding the sexual revolution. But no talk of this topic would be complete without discussing pornography. Porn is one thing, but porn on demand being available to the youngest, most vulnerable people in society is something else entirely. By the way, pornography is not free speech. I know it's been argued that it is free speech, even by our founding fathers, some who believe that speech and porn must be fully intertwined. Otherwise, the temptation will always be for tyrants to use the claim of indecent speech must be controlled by the government. Therefore, we must allow for pornography. But porn with no limits is obviously ludicrous. But that's mostly what we have today online, by the way. The exclamation of, "Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God," is not necessarily a prayer. It is designed to entice arousal. A curious aspect of arousal is that it can be what is known as kinky, which simply means that the ordinary can be twisted into something completely strange to effect even greater arousal. It's no wonder, then, that the main thing porn supporters want to achieve is the perverse and twisted kinky idea that porn should be for all ages. That is their ultimate goal, to normalize adult-child sex. And I think we all know this, with the drag queen story hours being all the rage. Some will say there are laws against anyone under the age of 18 viewing porn. Well, if you believe those laws work, I have some real estate at the bottom of the ocean I'd like to sell you dirt cheap. Kids from liberated liberal families view porn all the time, even very young kids. Most kids do. It's just too easy to access. So these twin demons must be fully addressed, which means that feminism as we know it will not stand. In fact, it doesn't have a chance, and it will suffer major discreditation in the not-too-distant future. How do I know this? I know this because I know the pro-lifers, many of whom are abolitionists. They are laser-focused on their cause, and with the recent overturn of Roe v. Wade, they have more vision and energy than ever before. Never mind that they are in the minority and the rest of the world doesn't seem to get their passion at all. That doesn't matter. But if they are to succeed, they must do the following. They need to get off their moral high horse and focus on just exactly why abortion is so important to liberals. Why is abortion their one sacred cow that they could never let loose their death grip on? Why does worldwide statism hinge on this one cause? Or so it seems to the statists. We don't need to scour statistics and research this question for months and try to get some answer. Just engage a little uncommon common sense. And it all comes down to numbers. What are the Democrats' most reliable voting bloc? Sexually active middle-class and wealthy women and poor, mostly single women. Again, mostly Democrats and mostly sexually active, which can be read as nihilist, especially because these are modern liberals who believe in good feelings and what feels better than having lots and lots of orgasms. So abortion pills and actual abortions are guaranteed well into the future until or unless pro-lifers address the two pink elephants in the room that aren't really being addressed too much these days. Those being, number one, porn on demand, and number two, the feminazi creed of foaming at the mouth, man-hating paranoia, which has supported their sexual liberation, which has, in turn, fueled their love of sick and twisted femporn, whatever that is. Nothing can be done to dismantle the $100 billion porn industry because there's too much money protecting that racket. So the jugular vein attack has to be upon the feminist racket. It's far easier to attack and dismantle because feminism's roots all began with silly ideas. Prohibition was basically a feminist idea. All we have to do is counter them with smarter ideas based on wisdom and biblical values. Then these new old ideas will destroy feminism as we know it. Then, when these broads start to get better at closing their legs and saying I do rather than I won't, and having unaborted babies, then we'll have far greater leverage at attacking the on-demand porn industry, which must occur as well, in order to take all the nonstop energy away from the sex without consequences crowd in the demon rat party that supports no restrictions abortion. This 1-2 punch, by the way, is the only thing that will work long-term to defeat this monstrous abortion industry. I know this because I know human nature. Habits don't change until hearts and minds change. Changes which affect all of us. A simple law declaring victory over abortion would only be a Pyrrhic victory at best, and would soon be overturned, just like the prohibition against alcohol. True change always has deep, deep roots. What does the Bible say about abortion? More important, what does it say about us as his unique and special creation? Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nations. Remember, take action, get involved, and stay focused. You've been listening to No PC Allowed. I am Mac Iverson. We will meet again next week and every week.